Hello, hello. Welcome back to the PagerDuty Twitch stream. It's Friday afternoon, so it's time for the HowTo Happy Hour. I'm Mandy Walls, DevOps Advocate here at PagerDuty. With me today, I have two of our data scientists, Max and Everaldo. Guys, welcome to the stream.
Hello.
Hello.
Tell us a bit about yourselves, who you are, what you do for PagerDuty.
Should I go first?
Go for it, Max.
Okay. Well, hello. My name is Max Lee, and I'm a data scientist here in the data science core team of PagerDuty, which is a team that researches and builds machine learning features for our software. I've been here at PagerDuty for about a year now. It's been a great ride so far. And as you can see, I'm also a big Premier League soccer fan, ready for the North London derby tomorrow, and representing my team.
Awesome. No trash talking in the chat about ourselves today, man. So everybody else is free game, but not ours. So, Everaldo?
Hello. So I'm Everaldo. I'm a senior engineering manager on the same team as Max. I steer away from wearing polarizing jerseys. So
no controversial stance here.
No personal attacks on this stream. But been with PagerDuty for 3 months. It's been a really exciting ride. Just like Max said, there's a lot of interesting projects on the team. So happy to be here today.
Awesome. So today we're going to be talking about alert grouping. So start us off. What is alert grouping and what's it solve for people?
Yeah. So in general, PagerDuty's alert grouping features help reduce noise for a customer by grouping together alerts into an incident that we or the customer thinks are related to each other. This way, there's no need to notify responders every time an alert comes in. You can imagine how frustrating it may be if a responder gets paged 300 times in the span of a few minutes, and all of these alerts refer to the same infrastructure problem.
Awesome.
And yeah.
So are there multiple types of alert grouping? Where are we getting all this stuff?
Yeah, there are actually. There are 3 types of alert grouping that you can choose from at PagerDuty. So namely, number 1, the time-based alert grouping. 2, the content-based alert grouping. And our personal favorite, intelligent alert grouping.
All right. So why would a customer choose one versus the other versus your favorite?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Let's start with kind of the simplest, time-based alert grouping. So I think of time-based alert grouping as kind of like a blunt instrument, right? Like a hammer to everyone's noisy infrastructure problem, if you will.
That's percussive maintenance is what that's
Yes, yeah, exactly. So time-based alert grouping will automatically add alerts to an open incident for a user-selected period of time. Now, if you have a relatively simple service where only one possible thing can go wrong, then using time-based alert grouping makes a lot of sense for you. However, if your service is a bit more complicated, with multiple resources that can spit out a variety of alerts pertaining to specific issues, then time-based alert grouping may not give you the most ideal groupings, right? Now, the second one, the content-based alert grouping, allows our customers the ability to sort of go into their alerts and manually create grouping logic using the actual payload content that came with the alert. Now, content-based alert grouping gives you a lot of control over what to merge, but with this kind of power comes great responsibility as well. Customers will really need to understand the details of their infrastructure to do this correctly, and we'll need to put in the extra work to configure this feature. Now, for the third type, our personal favorite, like I said, intelligent alert grouping. I kind of want to bring out some slides just to sort of
let's
go
do
over
it
more specifically. Yeah, a little bit more complicated. It's intelligent after all, right?
Well, yeah.
So can I go? I don't
Yep. We can see cool. You. Go for it.
Awesome. Okay. Now, like I mentioned earlier, now time-based alert grouping is too much of a kind of blunt instrument hammer, and content-based alert grouping is too much of a kind of a scalpel. I would say intelligent grouping might be for you. So intelligent alert grouping, or IAG, uses machine learning to automatically group alerts that are related to each other into the same incident. It'll even adapt to user feedback over time. Well, let's kind of take a deep dive into how it works. So like in a nutshell, IAG works by comparing the text similarity between incoming alert summaries, and will cluster together alerts that are most similar to each other into the same incident. An additional grouping time window parameter currently at 5 minutes after the last alert determines whether or not an incoming alert is eligible to be grouped to an existing cluster.
So that means if it's been longer than 5 minutes, it becomes a new.
Yes, correct. Currently, yep. If it comes in after that first incident comes in, first alert comes in after 5 minutes, it will just generate a new cluster or a new incident.
Okay.
Correct. And yeah, so as mentioned before, in addition to text similarity, there's also a background learner that will adapt any user feedback due to errors and will adjust future grouping activity from what it has learned.
So that means if I go into an incident and I say, okay, this alert doesn't actually belong to this incident, then like the magical machine learning elves on the back end are going to learn from that stuff, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It might take you a couple of tries just so that just like all of us, we don't always get something the first time correctly, right? So it might take you a couple of tries so that the learning algorithms are actually like, are you sure you want to do this kind of thing? But yeah, eventually it will start automatically adapt to that feedback.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we think that IAG is ideal if you want to sort of let us figure out how to group things for you based on the actual content of the alert title. It requires very minimal setup from the user, and generally works quite well across the broad range of our customers that we've seen. Anywhere between very large companies that have super complex NOC teams to even smaller DevOps teams. And I think Everaldo can actually show you how this feature works in our software.
Such high expectations being set. For the record, this is also my favorite type of alert grouping. So it's nice. It's kind of an improvement over the manual process where instead of having to rely on your own manual input to decide how things are being grouped, we have this machine learning models that Max has trained that do that for you in essence, right? They take a look at your alerts, the content, the text portion of how your alerts are being logged, and they learn how to group those things in a way that's meaningful and makes sense. And it's nice because then, as Max put earlier in the stream, that instead of getting bombarded by a huge number of alerts, you just get a summarized version of that based on the groupings that this model is making for you behind the scenes. And depending on your setup, and I'll give a quick overview of where you'll find this feature in the product here.
Yeah.
You can actually achieve a pretty significant amount of what we call internally here noise reduction, which is how many alerts you can kind of combine together and reduce toil on whoever is on call. And I've been on call so many times and been bombarded by alerts, and I wish that my employer at the time had this feature turned on. It would have been great. But let me see if I can share my screen here. Buttons, computers, difficult. There you go. Can you all see?
There we go. Yep.
Right. So this is just your typical PagerDuty product here. I'm using a test account that we have here internally. Nothing super exciting happening at the moment, but if something breaks, like you'd see your current incidents here. You can go to your service directory in your account, and here you essentially see the list of services that are enabled in your PagerDuty account. And these alert grouping methods that Max described earlier, they can be turned on individually for each service that you have set up. So if I pick one here at random, let's say I want to take a look at this service API service that I'm on call for, let's say. I'm not, thankfully. So there's nothing open at the moment, but if there were any incidents, you'd see them here. And the place where you go to find the alert grouping features that Max described would be under the settings here. So under settings, you'd see the reduce noise block here that gives you visibility into all the different types of alert groupings that Max described. So the first one was just the time base. So here, it's pretty simple. You'd specify a duration of time. And then based on that duration, we would have this automated process to group your alerts. Then there was a bit of an evolution to that, as Max described, that's based on content. So here, as a user, I could go here and create groupings for my alerts based on actual data that that my service has produced in the past. So for example, I could say, hey, if in the future I get an alert that shares that same event type or details, and as they match based on that particular string, they will get grouped as part of the same alert group. And then lastly, I went too far, but we have the intelligent alert grouping, which is what Max was describing. So this one here is quite powerful. So this is where we're leveraging machine learning here to do all of that work for you. So instead of you having to specify what fields you want to match based on and what values you're looking for to perform those matches, like the models behind the scenes will do that for you. All you have to specify here, technically, is the grouping window. And we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, but depending on this grouping window here, you'll experience a different level of grouping, right? And you can think of it as, the larger you make this window. So if I make it an hour, 60 minutes, then I was just watching a 60 minutes video, but don't let me get sidetracked. All alerts that happen within that time window, depending on what the models are predicting for them, will get grouped.
Okay.
So there's a new feature, and I'll force Max to talk a little bit more about that, where we will also recommend to you, based on your data, what is the time window that makes most sense for you to start with. But let's say I go with the recommended time window here. So once I turn on this feature here, if I go and save my settings, then starting now, as alerts are coming up, our models will group them for you automatically. And so one thing you can do here as well is to go and preview what you should expect to see in terms of noise reduction, given the settings that you just provided here. So in this particular case here, it actually looks pretty awesome. So looking back in time, 45 days, if I were not using intelligent alert grouping, I would have had over 500 alerts come my way, right? So if I were on call, those would be, I don't know, 504 tears that I would have to shed by responding to each individual alert, right? But I know Max. I have problems with his soccer team choices, but I like the features that he developed. So I'm using intelligent alert grouping here, and I can see that it actually provides a pretty huge amount of compression here, noise compression. So instead of seeing 504 individual alerts, I actually would have seen 19. This is a bit of a special case here, and it could be due to the nature of these alerts, and they may have been very similar to one another, which provided a really great compression rate. This is not always going to be the case, but the model is set up to take those things into account. And in this case here, I saved myself the trouble of having to manually intervene or act on almost 500 individual alerts, which is awesome. So I only have to dedicate my attention span to 19 issues instead of 500. And that's all done automatically for you. And all I had to do was to turn on the intelligent alert grouping feature and select the time window. Do you want to talk a little bit about the recommended time window here, Max?
Yeah, sure. So this is actually an all-new feature that we will be hopefully releasing. We're in early access right now, but hopefully it will be general access soon. And the idea is that currently the PagerDuty product for IAG, it has a fixed five-minute window, like I mentioned earlier, right? But 5 minute doesn't work for everyone. Every customer's services have different characteristics. Alerts may tend to come in at 5 minutes, but it may also tend to come in at 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and 30 minutes. So what we do is we actually sort of look at the data of a particular service and look at what sort of is the general, we call it interarrival time, but what basically means is how off, like what are on average, like what is the successive time between the first alert to the second alert, right? So we look at that gap for every single service, and we calculate what's basically the most common in or arrival time for each service. And we actually use that and recommend that to you as kind of a starting point for you to kind of, choose that right window, right time window the first time around. You can obviously, if that doesn't work for you, you can obviously like shorten it or increase it, but it's a good starting point for most customers.
Interesting. Is that a piece of data that will change over time as more incidents come in and it learns more about what's going on?
Yeah, so that piece of data will definitely change over time, but not very often. What we've seen in the data, like every 3 or 4 months, it drastically changes. So usually, if you got, if you review it once, for a quarter, you should generally be good for that quarter, unless there are some massive code changes to the service. But yeah.
Awesome.
Yep. And the nice thing, once again, is that as a user, you have the flexibility to make adjustments, right? You starting with the recommended window is a great starting place. Like it puts you, at least based on what our models are getting from the data, in a nice place to get as much grouping from your own data as we think is reasonable. But what really matters is your experience with the product and the feature, right? So you do have the ability to kind of control that based on how you see the groupings like reacting to the data that you're producing, which is great. And over time, as Max said, like we have a process in place to take how that data is fluctuating, how things are changing, how your service is responding and creating events, and incorporate that into this recommendation, which is also pretty nice.
Yeah, just the savings on alerts to incidents and that reduction alone it's going to be huge for so many users.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what we've seen.
Absolutely. So tell us a bit about like as you're thinking about your PagerDuty account. So this is something that you set for every service that you have, right? This is not necessarily a global setting. There's like a default, but then if you want to adjust it, you adjust it at the service level, right?
That's right. Yeah. And it's done that deliberately. As you can imagine, right? The same account may have services that have a very different type of alert patterns to them. So to make sure that these models behind the scenes are incorporating information that's specific to each service, so that these recommendations and the groupings themselves are kind of tailored to that service, then some of this setup is service specific.
Cool. For teams that are using like business services, is there a way that gets incorporated in this yet? Or so if I say, okay, here's my business service and there's like one wheel at the back that's noisy, is there a way of capturing like all of the other services in that might be impacted?
So I think currently it's only like a per service. We don't generally looking at like a business service, but it's an interesting idea. And if customers, give us feedback that that's something that they want, we definitely something to look at.
Yeah. Let's hear from some customers. If you have questions, I put in the chat. You can ask them over there. If there's anything that you'd like to know about that there. So what do you hear from customers about this? Have you talked to folks who are using it, what they're finding? Do they like it? I'm assuming they're going to love it.
I think so. Currently, we're EAing with a couple of our customers, and I think a lot of them are experiencing quite a lot of noise reduction so far. They're happy. Some customers have initially started with 3 services just to test it out, because I understand customers are always risk averse to change, right? But then, as they see results, they're like, let's just activate all of our services and see what happens. So definitely pretty positive so far in EA.
Yeah, and to be clear, Max is referring to the flexible window portion of the feature.
Window version,
is generally available. So Mandy, you can go and purchase it for your own account. And the feedback on that is pretty overwhelmingly positive. And as you can imagine, right, it's a feature that's providing like a huge reduction in toil for your team. So people don't need to be dedicating so much time and attention to things that can be easily just grouped together. Yeah, so pretty positive. I use
Awesome.
it.
Yeah, the test account that I use is pretty quiet. So like it's like, oh yeah, because these instances are 3 weeks apart on this service that you've been playing with, like, yeah, there's no group.
Yeah, and we actually have just to kind of go into the flexible time window a little bit more.
Yeah.
We specifically don't let you put that time window to like three weeks because it just doesn't make sense, right? Yeah, so we have some safeguards around, maximum time window, so you don't actually like over compress or something like that. Like click a menu, like click a menu button and be like, oh, like 3 weeks. That would be bad. So
that's one way to suppress alerts, I guess. I don't know.
That would be
something like, that sounds more like hazing of your on call than anything else. But yeah, 3 week window. We do sometimes get those questions, like the machine learning and all those capabilities that are part of the PagerDuty platform. Like we don't surface those, right? Like those are behind the scenes doing their work. Occasionally we get folks who really think they should be able to tweak that somewhere. It's like it's back there, it's doing its job. And if you have another issue, let us know. But yeah, some people are pretty funny about that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely like continuously want to like hear from our customers though, right? Like any feedback, we take very seriously. And that's just the way we kind of constantly improve our product. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting comment too, because I think in general, as data scientists, like we often think that machine learning models are kind of arrogant, like they think they know what they do, and technically they kind of do because they're looking at the actual data, right? So
yes,
unless Max was like too distracted by soccer games and mess something up, like the model will actually make what it thinks is the most accurate decisions, like based on real data that's been produced. So the nice thing about how we incorporate machine learning to the PagerDuty products is that we do go with like a default to that data-driven set of parameters and recommendations, but you have the flexibility to adapt that. So at times, like maybe if the model itself is not adapting like quick enough to a change that you performed in your end, then you have the ability to kind of get ahead of the curve and maybe change that time window a little bit, and then the model will catch up later. But it's a really neat way to incorporate machine learning solutions like to a product while also giving you the flexibility to go and make manual tweaks to get it to work well for you.
Yeah.
Have I been picking on Max like too much today? You deserved it.
It's all good, right? He's fine. He can take it. He's an Arsenal fan. Jeez.
I mean, for the last 10 years, I've been taking it, so it's all good. We have finally some light at the end of the tunnel this year, so I'm good.
Hope for you yet, man. Hope for you yet. Well, that's awesome. So do you have anything else you want to share with folks while we're here? If anybody has any questions, you can add them in the chat. It's pretty self-explanatory what it does. And like for folks who just want to experiment with it, like you just go in there and change it on some service, right?
Turn it on. I think the pretty easy ways to even go and trial some of these features in the product nowadays.
For EI and digital, operations.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Cool. And if you don't have those packages, talk to your sales team about an upgrade. So you get all these fun features. Yeah. So awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us today about it? How cool is working on this stuff? Like I am not a data engineer. I had a machine learning class in grad school that was like way too long ago. So like, what's neat about what you guys do with your jobs?
Yeah. Look, for me, I think it's always just the constant learning of new stuff is very exciting. And just figuring something out. Obviously, I think like most technical engineers and things like that's always that like trying to solve a problem that keeps you going. But it's not always, for a data scientist, it's not always like you have a problem, you're going to solve it. There's a lot of very unglamorous things that you do in the background that you spend a ton of time on, that kind of like keeps it moving. But it's not all glamour in the background. But when you do figure something out and create a product that like customers enjoy, it's really satisfying.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'd echo all of that. I think like for me, I come from a research background, so I did a lot of like research in machine learning, and usually the ultimate outcome of that was like I'll go and present a paper, and that was exciting. But okay, cool. Like maybe some people will read my paper and think that the mathematics there was really interesting, but at PagerDuty, like the outcome here is actually really tangible. Like we can take all of what we know in machine learning and work with product, work with engineering, engineers, software developers, and it's a really cross-functional collaboration. And the ultimate outcome is actually a very meaningful, tangible feature in the product. The beauty of it is also that sometimes people don't even realize that there's machine learning behind it. If you didn't know, and if Max and I didn't tell you, you might think that intelligent alert grouping is just intelligent because magic. But no, like there's a lot of really complex work behind the scenes, and that's part of what I really enjoy. Right, that you can do this like huge project that's really complex, uses like a lot of data, consumes a lot of like months of our lives, but the ultimate result is like this really simple feature that it looks like magic, and it works well, and it's exciting. So instead of just publishing a paper and presenting, like I get to see real users, like seeing the positive impact of a feature like that removes toil from your life and gives you more time to go watch soccer games and see your team lose every time. But you do what you want with your time. That's okay. Yeah.
That was slick, man. That was slick. Do you have a rebuttal on that, Max? A final rebuttal?
My rebuttal will be tomorrow's result.
Yeah,
I'll let the game speak for itself.
Max doesn't show up on Monday. Like, I know what happened.
Right? Dies of shame. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Everaldo, Max, thanks for being on. This is great. I posted some links in the chat for the documentation for folks to find out. If you can't see it on your account, talk to your sales rep and get an upgrade. And for folks who do have the right subscriptions, all the docs are there. So you too can go into your favorite service and turn on intelligent alert grouping and give yourself a break, right, on all these crazy, noisy alerts and reap the rewards of all the fine work these two guys have been doing. So, awesome.
That's right.
All right. Thanks for being with us, guys. That's all from us today. We'll be back on Monday with the PagerDuty Garage. And in the meantime, we'll wish you an uneventful weekend. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Manny.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you never miss a stream. Follow us at PD Community and PagerDuty on twitch.tv. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you'd like to be on our stream, email us at community-team@pagerduty.com so we can feature the cool things you're doing. And don't forget, check out all of our global events on our calendar at pagerduty.com/events.